welcome. It is 7:30 here in the Central Time Zone. Time once again for Cinematic Conversations. And for those of you who have been with us for the last year, once a week, I have some not so good news. We are not killing Cinematic Conversations, but we are going to be moving it to once a month instead of once a week. And my theory here is that people want to go out and see things. And this was created for a time when nobody wanted to go out. And when we do them, we'll try to make them, well, not that they're not special now, but we'll make them even more special. So if you want more info in the Video Fest newsletter, we will keep you apprised of what is coming up. So hopefully all of you have done your homework and you've watched this great documentary about a great actress and her life. And we are really happy to have the director here, and Hari Marvel. I'm not going to get this right. I practiced this 6 times beforehand. And so, Hari, why don't you?
Say Dukakis?
Mavro Michalis.
Mavro
It's all the same, they're related.
So welcome, and it's really wonderful. Thank you for coming to meet with us. And we also have Sari Vale. Did I get that right? I'm really bad at pronunciation.
That's okay. Sally Vale. Yep.
Val. Okay, that would be easier. And who teaches at UNT, but also was in a production at the Dallas Theater Center with Olympia, and has a very, a really great, some good stories, hopefully, that she'll be able to tell us, because I've never been on a shoot with her and I've never worked with her, but I've seen so much. And so, Hari, let me start with this. I mean, the first question is like, why did you want to make this film and how did it come to be?
Well, I wanted to make the film after I met her and after I became friends with her for about a year. And I don't know if you want to get into that, how that happened.
Yeah.
Okay, so she was supposed to teach acting at NYU. I was doing my master's in film. And a week before the class started, it was canceled. And I was devastated because she has, as a Greek, she has been an icon all my life, and I really wanted to take class with her. So at the time, I was I had a production company in Cyprus where I would bring dance and theater shows to Cyprus from around the world, and I had just started doing film workshops. So I thought, well, why don't I invite Olympia to come and do the workshop in Cyprus? And I contacted her through my school, through NYU. And we met, and a few months later, she was in Cyprus, and we spent 2 weeks where I was, taking the workshop all day, for 2 weeks, and then in the evenings and weekends, I was the tour guide. So we created a friendship, and then we ended up finding out that we lived near each other in Manhattan, and we saw each other often. And one day, April, I think, Tribeca Film Festival, I was watching the documentary on Carol Channing, and I absolutely loved that film. And I turned to my husband afterwards and I said, somebody needs to do a documentary on Olympia Dukakis. And he said, well, why don't you do it? You're a filmmaker. And that's how the idea started. Now, why?
So it's all because of your husband, right?
Yes, totally. It's true. And why I wanted to do it, I just, after meeting her, I just realized that she had so many things to say, so many things to talk about. I had never met someone who was so intelligent, so such a workaholic, so kind and generous with her time, and somebody with such a big name that could actually go back to when she was working. She kept herself vulnerable, and I just, it was just one of those things that I thought that there was a lot of messaging that could go out to the world.
So Hari, one of the things that I think is really special about this film and makes it sort of transcendent is
there was a lot of messaging that could go out.
Hold on a second.
So Hari, one of the things that I think is really special about
have to mute somebody. Okay, there we go. So one of the things really special is you have such great access to her. And I think that that just made everything so much better, that you were able to capture a lot of really important moments. How did you get her to trust you so much that she lets you get so many intimate moments?
I think one of the reasons is that we had already been friends. I had already started asking her questions about, I remember the first time she mentioned the Great Mother, for example. I was like, what? who who is this Great Mother and what? And so then I started asking her, so without the cameras there. So she knew that I was genuinely curious about a lot of the things that she was interested in. And I mean, with the Great Mother, I remember at some point she said to me, Harry, I don't know why the hell you are interested in the Great Mother. No one is interested in the Great Mother. And I said, well, it's definitely not going in the film, but it's an incredible subject that I have I've never heard of before. And I just want to know. So, partly I think because I wasn't behind the camera, I was doing sound. So I was not in her face with the camera, which I think that helped also. And maybe because we were both Greek Americans and we had similar experiences. I don't know. She opened up, and the only thing that was off limits when she said yes was her kids. She said, "You do not have access to my kids. I don't, And I said, "That's fine," And of course that changed eventually, but yeah.
So and think about that, and particularly when she talks about her husband having an affair. I mean, these are things that often people in a documentary don't like talk about on camera. And I thought there were so many scenes where she was really open and genuine. And just also, if you think about it, many actors perform when they're on camera and are very conscious of that and are guarded in a sense. But I think what sort of makes the film work is that sense of openness that she has.
Well, she wrote a biography called Ask Me Again Tomorrow. It's the book. And what I realized soon with Olympia was that if I had asked something that she wasn't willing to talk about at that moment, I could ask at a different day and I could get an answer depending on her mood. And so, there was, and it's funny when you look back, we went to Los Angeles 3 days after she almost died with the car accident. And, she had the black eye, broken hand, and she was emotionally, she was all over the place. She felt insecure. She had said to me, all of a sudden I start looking down when I'm walking instead of looking out. So I picked up on on her emotional world, and I thought, okay, this is a good time to ask about death. That's why it was literally like, what do you think, what do you think of death? What do you think of dying? And I did not expect the answer that I got, and it just went on from there. And in LA, we spoke about regrets and death and aging and all that stuff. And then in Cyprus, where she was supposed to do this play in Greek, and her co-star got run over by a car and broke her hip, and the show was canceled. But the Cyprus National Theater had paid so much money for Olympia Dukakis to be in Cyprus to do a show, so they were trying to figure out what to do. She suggested, why don't I do my one-woman show, since I know that very well. And they said, great. But she ended up being in Cyprus for 4 months with really nothing to do because she knew her show. So we were like tourists, it was like, let's go here, let's go there, So there was a lot of smoking hookah and a lot of drinking, and it was like, let's talk about sex, let's talk about so
was that when she was smoking the hookah?
Yeah. so it was just finding the times that she wanted to talk about specific things, trial and error.
Yeah, and a lot of that is trust, and also a lot of that is the sort of awareness of being in the moment to ask the question in the moment that you're moved by, that allows her to respond in that way. And I think that's, what a good documentary can do when it's done really well. I think one of the other things that's really important about the film is that most people who don't know very much about her mostly know, well, there's Moonstruck and she got an Academy Award, and don't know anything about her theater. And to me, that was like all I knew about her was, well, related to Michael Dukakis and Moonstruck.
Yeah.
And to me, the great revelation was about the theater. And I assume that when you went into this, you knew all of this. But for us, or for me as the relatively uneducated viewer, this was an incredible revelation.
Well, I didn't know everything. I knew a little bit. I had seen her, 3 times, I think, in New York in the theaters. I had heard about the whole theater in Montclair, New Jersey, but I did not understand the extent, and I also asked the wrong questions at the beginning, thinking like, oh, was the Academy your big moment? And she's like, or your big, yeah, and she's like, no, I've done a lot amazing work before that. It's just that most people didn't know me before it. But for me, I've done so much in theater and so many parts that I absolutely loved. And, so it was a learning experience for me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that the theater that you had in New Jersey, I mean, I think that to me was really kind of amazing, that she builds a theater company to do, work in a certain kind of way, and what it takes, the difference between being an actor in a production and having a production company and putting on theater is really important and a very hard thing to do. So of all of her accomplishments, to me, that's the thing that sort of sticks out that I didn't know, that I thought was just really incredible.
Well, and also the fact that Montclair is Montclair today. Montclair was like a city near the New York City, but no one really was living there. And there was you know, 8 couples that decided, married couples that decided, let's go to Montclair and start our own theater company. And it was incredible. They had it for 20 something years. They forced New Yorkers to go to Montclair to watch theater.
And is that a good thing?
Yeah. Because they did amazing work. That was the thing. And they did not depend on like money-making shows. They did experimental stuff. The work of you could do a whole documentary on the theater company.
Yeah, and I think being outside of Manhattan gives you an opportunity to experiment a little bit more, but also it's really hard to get all those people to go over the bridge to see what you're doing. So Sally, tell me about when you met her and what the circumstances around that were.
Sure. So I'm a member of the acting company at the Dallas Theater Center, and I've been an actress for many years, and was selected to be a Lunt Fontanne Fellowship recipient back in 2011, which is this great thing that they do. They bring regional theater actors in from all around the country for an intensive week-long immersion under the guidance of a master teacher. And so I had the great good fortune for Olympia to be the master teacher at my fellowship retreat, where she took us into a deep dive immersion investigation of Chekhov, which was near and dear to her heart. She was a big fan of the classics. And I think that, her sensibility, her lack of sentimentality or sentimentalizing things, her curiosity about human beings, and her just extraordinary observation and interest in human beings, people, I think is what made her such an incredible actress and just human being, but made Chekhov, I think, particularly appealing to her. So it was really fun to work with her for that week. being taught by her around something that she was so passionate about, and really could kind of brought things out in the works of Chekhov, the humor and the boredom that the characters suffer and all of that sort of stuff. Just revealed like layers of an onion, you know, more and more each day that we were together and worked. And so that's where I first met her. And that's where our friendship began. And then I had the good fortune to continue to be in communication with her. And we visited a lot. I visited with her when I was in New York. We brought her to the Dallas Theater Center. She did a week-long workshop with the acting company. Again, we focused on not on Chekhov, but the Greeks. So we were again working, you know, on something that she knew so well and was so passionate about. And then I had the great fortune to bring her up to UNT, where she got to work with some students, meet the film students there, and an extraordinary human being, you know, just
so Sally, as somebody who also teaches, what are the kind of things that she did in that first workshop she did with you, and that was part of that special thing where you're dealing with Chekhov? Are there things that helped you think about how you could work as an actor, how to because as a teacher, these are things we think about. It's like, how do we tell our students? And as a teacher, what are some of the exercises or ways in which she challenged you to look at text or character or things in a really interesting kind of way?
Well, she really reinforced the idea of just diving in and not acknowledging any kind of net. No net. I call it no net acting, where you just kind of get in there and flop around in it. There's no right way to do it. The only thing that you have to do is commit to it and be fearless in the process of it, and let that reveal what it reveals. So yes, she did. She talked a lot about really encouraged the actors in our investigation of the text to dig into all of the aspects of the character, right? Not just what you see, but what else? Keep mining it. Don't shy away from the conflict. Don't shy away from what isn't beautiful. These are dimensional, complicated, messy human beings. So relish that, dive into it. She's this great exercise where, we talk about when we're acting, we talk about the character having actions, meaning the character wants something and how are they going to go about getting it, just like we do as human beings as we walk through our lives, right?
And we do that in film too. Like,
of course,
what do they want in this scene? I want to get out the door. That's what I want to do.
Yeah. And how are you going to go about achieving that objective, right? So she did this great exercise where she lined up a bunch of chairs, and she said every time the character's action changes, every time how she is going to go about getting what she wants shifts, or she's affected by another, you need to switch seats. And so hopping down from one chair to the other, this is the chair where this action happens, this is the chair where this action can happen. So just, here are 5 things that you're going to play with in this scene, and then hopping from chair to chair, sometimes in the middle of a line. So just the action, the physicalization of action, getting out of your brain and just into the world of the character and their complexity was something that she reinforced and insisted upon, which was wonderful.
So Sally, did you take that to your classes? Did you have your students do that with the chairs?
Yes, I did. Yes, I've hauled the chairs out a few times over the years, for sure.
All right, Harry, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I wanted to add something on that because one of the things that she fought for was for the actor to have his or her time with the text and with the character. That you don't need to go into rehearsal already knowing where you're gonna go. And she said, practically speaking, there are shows that you're going to go into where the director wants you, like, to go there right away. And sometimes you have to do it, and it makes, your work to work by yourself to figure out, all the work that you need to do to find the character. You might have to do it by yourself. But she also fought for, in plays when she was rehearsing, to have the actors to have that time where you can just, be and explore and be able to ask questions, because as the actor, you can, you bring a lot more into the play than anyone else can bring in. The director, the producer, the writer, you're already bringing something more. So and there was a whole scene in the documentary that we spoke about that had to be cut. But she created a circle called circling the drain, where she basically, because she said, all my life I felt like I've been circling the drain, trying not to be swallowed down. And it started
Great
with
metaphor.
it started with she was with Diane Weiss, and Diane Weiss was doing a Broadway show, and they had brought out the set, and it was this table and a bench and a stool that was really high. So when Diane sat on it, she was like this, you couldn't really see her. And she said, can we change this? Can we lower the bench? And they said, no, the set is done. And she's like, yeah, but I can't really see. And she's like, oh, we'll give you pillows. And so she would have to, like, on a stool, put pillows and go up and down the stool while doing the play. And they said, no, it's all set, it's all done, we can't change anything. And Olympia said, well, what did you do? And then Olympia says, this is a 2 Academy Award winning actress, she said. And Diane Weiss says, I went into the bathroom and I cried. So that started this group where it was just actors at the beginning. Then they brought actors and writers. Then they brought actors and writers and directors. Then they brought NYU and Columbia University, like, to see how they can change, because theater has become this thing where it's the director's voice. The actors are just, they go in to do what the director wants, and then they go out. And she was a huge fighter for actors, right, Sally?
Absolutely. She was fierce in her advocating around the idea of, well, she was really frustrated. She expressed her frustration at the sort of dwindling number of rehearsal weeks. Theater's trying to save money, and so let's axe it from 4 weeks to 2.5 weeks. And so the process of creating the work, the process of making the story happen, was sort of getting sucked up by the machine. So she was a wonderful advocate, on behalf of a more holistic, coming back to a more holistic approach to the making of the story, and all voices being equal, rather than not. Yeah.
And it sounds like that came from the whole theater company as an approach. But as you say this, it really surprises me very deeply as somebody who works in film, where you always hear actors say, well, in theater, we get to spend way more time developing these characters. And I thought that, theater was the actors' medium, where the actors have control and the directors are just there to move people around. That's sort of the impression that I've always been told. And to hear people say that, oh my God, in theater, we don't have enough time for the actors to really have their voice and to be equally there, that's really kind of shocking in a sense. But this is true.
It is. A lot of times it depends on, what's unique about theater is that every time you gather to do a play, you're working with, generally speaking, a brand new group of people who have different vocabulary and a different way of approaching the process of the work. And, if you're doing a play like Medea, or, Olympia did, for example, Hecuba, back at ART, I think, you've got in American regional theater, you have, so someplace like the Public or the Dallas Theater Center or the Alley or the Guthrie, you've got, maybe 3 weeks before you're into tech rehearsals, and then another week before you're into previews. So you know, there's just not, there's not a lot of time, you know, to, it feels like that. And so sometimes there's not room for voices in the room. But again, there's times there is, you know, it really depends upon the director. But very often, it's not unusual for the actors in the room to feel like they just need to show up and do their job and get on with it and do what other people are telling them to do. Olympia was very, very pro actor communicating, and actually, if you're playing the character, if you've done your work, if you know what the character needs, wants in the world of the story, and you don't agree with something, speak up. Right. Communicate about it. Don't just sit there and do something different. You may not get your way, but but at least contribute your voice. Don't back off of that. You know, there's room for everybody in the room, was really her.
So Sally, at the theater center now, if an actor said this table is too high, would the people who are, you know, the people who are making the sets and props say, oh, can't move? Would that really happen?
I would be shocked if it did, to be honest with you. I don't think that that there wouldn't be an adjustment that could be made. You know, I think they would recognize it pretty quickly and rally to figure out a way to problem solve.
I don't think,
you know,
I don't
but
think,
you just never know, you know.
I don't think regional theater, I don't think you get that in regional theater. This was like a Broadway,
right,
you know, production.
Heavily unionized.
Yeah, yeah.
Not that unions are a bad thing. But indeed. So, Hari, what were some of the biggest challenges in putting this film together, other than getting the money to make this film, which is always a big challenge when you're making a film?
Well, that was it.
So you said to your husband, it's your idea, you come up with the money, right?
Yeah, right. I love that you said other than the money. No, it was, you know, the blessing was that I was completely ignorant. I was so ignorant when it came to documentary filmmaker. So I was like, oh, I'll just find my friend who's going to hold the camera and I'll do the sound. So there's going to be just two of us. And I will pay for this with my American Express. Yeah. And which I did. You know, I spent 3 years shooting on American Express. I didn't have to find really, you know, money at this point. I was just concentrating on shooting. And then I thought, okay, you'll take $30,000 to edit this film, you know, so we did a Kickstarter campaign and we raised $100,000 and
pretty great.
Yeah, pretty great. But it didn't work like that. Like editors cost a lot more money than I thought they did. And
good editors do.
Good editors. Well, yeah, I mean, editors in general cost money, but I also made again, because of my ignorance and lack of education on documentary filmmaking.
Wait, hold on a second. You did go to NYU, right?
I took 0 documentary classes. Documentaries for me were like beneath me. I was going to be the next Martin Scorsese, and you know, like I'm never going to make a documentary ever. So I had no idea. And I had hired an Emmy award-winning editor who was going to edit this film. But what you realize is that there's documentaries and there's documentaries. Like there's different types of documentaries. And when that did not work well after 7 months and I had to fire him and lost quite a bit of money in the process, I contacted the editor who did the Joan Rivers documentary. And I said, Penelope, she didn't know me. And I was like, I need a little bit of advice. Can you please help me? And I told her what happened. And she's like, oh my God. She's like, no. She said, you need to find an editor who does cinema verite.
Yes.
Who, when you tell them that you have 300 hours of footage, they get excited.
Right.
Not they turn around like you and wanted to, like, you know, get out of the window, you know, run out of the door earlier. Right. So I was like, okay. So she guided me to this group of people, editors, who do that. And, you know, so then I was able to find the right editor. And when I asked her and I said, well, how long did the Joan Rivers documentary take? And she's like, well, it took us a little over 12 months. And I was like, and okay, and what's the weekly rate here that we're talking about? And she's like, well, it depends from the editor, but it can go from anywhere $2,000 to $10,000 a week.
Yes.
And my jaw just dropped, and I was like, this is never going to happen. This is never going to happen. How are we going to find all this money? It took us 4 years. You know, after we shot after 3 years of shooting, it took me 4 years to raise a little money, edit, raise more money, you know, edit, and yeah.
It is the way. So there is what I call the naivete theory of filmmaking.
Yes.
That oftentimes for their first film, if people knew what it took to make the film, nobody would ever make that film.
No one.
But that is a blessing, because if you knew and you said, oh my God, how no one would ever want to do that, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. And there is something sort of wonderful about going through this and sort of experiencing that. But the trauma of, like, I've just spent this money on this editor and it's not going the way I want. I can't afford any more money and I have to fire this guy. And how do you, or this person, how do you fire somebody after you've gone down and spent all this money, but this is not going the way I want it to go? I can just see how emotionally going through shooting the film is such a high. You get these wonderful moments. You know this is going to be a wonderful film, and then you see what this editor is doing, and it's not what you want, and it's got to be such a sad moment that you still believe that there's a good film, but you're not seeing that.
You know, I have to tell you, it was the darkest period of my life when that happened, and the next year, because you know, you just said that you know that it's going to be a good film. I did not know it was going to be a good film. I was told by the first editor, who did not understand cinema verite,
Yes.
that I didn't have any good footage, that we had to interview Olympia in a closed space so it can be like the base of the documentary. So in my mind, I was like, okay, I completely failed. I spent 3 years shooting crap, and but even though I went through what I went through, I think I needed to go through that, because that's when I connected with Olympia's darkness, with Olympia's struggles. I think that if I was, you know, a rich kid with a lot of money, and you know, I would have probably made a different documentary. I wouldn't have like gone to her struggles of how to be an act, you know, how to go through your life as an actor. And so in a way, like you said, it was a blessing. It was a blessing to go through all that in order to come out and make this film.
And when you go through all that and you have the film, you show it in an audience who is incredibly appreciative. It's like going from that low point to that high point. I mean, that's the kind of crack cocaine that keeps you going, right?
It is. I mean, our first screening was at Doc NYC. They gave us the 500 seater, and we had sold out, you know, we had standing people. And to be in that room and having the people laugh and cry at, you know,
At the right points.
At the right points, yeah. It was, and I feel so bad for people who finished their films in 2020 and that did not have the opportunity to sit in a theater with their film, because it's so different. I mean, our theatrical release got canceled, but we had a year of film festivals that I was able to be there and have this connection with the audience, which was incredible. There's nothing better than being in a movie theater with, you know, people watching your film.
So what was it like when you found the second editor who understood what cinema verite is? And for those who don't know, cinema verite, it was verite being truth in French, is a way of just shooting things that are in real life, shooting a lot of footage, and in the editing processing, assembling it together in a coherent way, as opposed to having a sit-down interview where you can know what's going to happen. It's a much easier thing to edit. It's just like you have to find those moments and find a way to bring connective tissue to them. So what was it like working with that editor?
Well, I started working with the main editor, and he worked on the film for about 14 months.
Hmm.
And then his mother passed away in England and he had to go back. And that interrupted everything. And it, it things were not happening. So at some point, and I said, "Hey, do you think I can just work with your assistant? Who had who had." So the assistant who has never edited a film before, and a director who has never edited a documentary before. So
Right.
the blind leading the blind, it was the best working relationship ever. It took us forever to get to the finished film, but it was like we were playing every day. I had such fear and such resentment for editing. I never wanted to do it, and this forced me to do it. And I have fallen in love both with documentaries and with editing. And yeah, going in there and trying to figure out a scene and going, no, it's not working, or when it did work, like that, the opening of the film, right? When we're at the Hollywood star, when she's getting
Yeah.
the Hollywood star.
Yeah.
We spent 3 months on that scene and it wasn't working. And I remember the one day I went to my first editor whose mother had died, Andrew, because he was consulting us now.
Yeah.
And I said, Andrew, I'm sorry, I can't make it work. We can't make it work. It's just impossible. And he said, just spend today, one more day on it.
Mhm.
And something clicked, and what you saw was what happened, and it just worked. And the endorphins that happen when you're like, oh my God, this is great. It's make it worth it.
Editing is, when it's well done, that sense of playing with the material. Sometimes when it's working well, it's kind of mind meld with the things, you're just kind of moving them around, and exploring is essentially kind of can be, when it's working well, what an actor does to put a performance together. And it really is kind of wonderful. It's kind of interesting that only when you had a deadline, meaning it has to be done today, did you come up with that idea. And sometimes a deadline makes creativity happen, right? I bet that's never happened to you, Sally. You're on mute.
Oh, never. No. Especially with memorizing lines. Oh, next Wednesday? By Tuesday night. There you go.
Right. And we can all relate to our students doing the very same thing, right? So, Hari, can you tell us a story about how you got the funding for the trip to Greece? And speaking of the trip there, that scene with the turtle is pretty amazing. And how did that come to be?
Okay, well, I'll give you a little, ask me again if I forget to answer your questions, but that turtle.
I have no problem asking again. So it's okay.
That turtle was so magical in so many different ways. I mean, we were supposed to go there. Somebody told us that there was going to be this turtle that got injured because wild dogs attacked it when it came to give birth. And they were going to release it back to the wild. So the whole family was going to be there. So I was like, oh, this is going to be great. We meet at the place where we're supposed to meet to go there, and the whole family has disappeared except Olympia. No one is there. So she's like, well, let's go alone. And I was like, okay, great. So we went there and we thought that I thought it was going to be this like tiny little turtle that they were going to, just put down, and then it was going to swim and it was going to be really cute. So when the turtle appears from the box,
Yes.
the whole world just gasps, and I knew. I was like, this is it. This is going to be the film. It was very few times that it was with the 4 old women. Mm-hmm. And the turtle, the two scenes that I was like, this is going to be in the film, no matter what. So Olympia, so fast forward a year later, we're trying to find money, and there's no money. This is before the Kickstarter campaign. And we find out that there was this woman from Lowell, Massachusetts, born a year before Olympia, who became a billionaire. She was the 12th daughter, Greek American, 12th daughter of this family, who was the only one who was educated and became a billionaire in chemicals. She was responsible for what do you call it? The drugs that are not the brand.
The knockoffs, the generic.
Generic, yeah.
Generic.
Yeah, so she's responsible for generic drugs in this country. She's responsible for the $20 ticket at the Met, you know, so people, because she felt like everybody should have access to culture and, you know, drugs. And so she had just died and left billions of dollars to a trust where 3 men were controlling, one of which was a Greek American. But you can apply for that money. You have to be invited. So we found out that they had given money to this magnet school in Brooklyn. They built a whole auditorium and a theater for the school. And they were gonna, you know, it was the big opening. So we're like, okay, we're gonna crash the party at the school. So we went there, and the Greek, because it was a Greek school, the Greek American was there. My executive producer went straight to him, started talking to him. Then she calls me over and says, "This is Harry Mavromichalis. He's doing a documentary about Olympia Dukakis." Yes. And he turns to me and he's like, "Oh," he said, "that's, you know, I've met Olympia a few years ago." And I said, "Oh, where did you meet her?" And he said, "You know, it was the strangest location. We were at this beach in Greece, and there was this turtle that they were releasing back into the wild." And all of a sudden it hit me. And I was like, oh my God. I said, "I remember you." I said, you were conversing with Olympia and you were joking about the turtle. I mean, they were going back and forth about, oh, you look at her, she's a drama queen. She's like, she likes the spotlight. It was like, you know, and I said, he introduces me to his wife. His wife is there talking, you know, because she was also there at the event. So then the wife says, why don't you send us an application for your film? So I go home, I go through my footage, I find the scenes of him and her talking, and I made like this 2-minute clip between the two of them, and I send it off with my application. And literally like 3 weeks later, we had $53,000 that came to us.
And that's a lot of money, and that really makes a difference.
Yeah. So that was one way we raised money. Kickstarter campaign where we raised $100,000. And I'll talk a little bit about that because that's how we got to Greece later. Okay. We had basically, you know, I chose to do the Kickstarter campaign where if you don't raise the amount of money that you say that you want, you lose everything.
Yes.
And I do that to push myself, you know, to push. And so we said, okay, $100,000. So we reached $80,000 literally 2 hours before the time is expiring. And we're like, okay, we've tried really hard. I've lost, you know, 2 years from my life. Like, you know, I've aged 10 years from this, but it's not going to happen. So I called my producer and I said, listen, Muriel, let's start an email. Let's create the email where we're going to thank everyone. And let's see if we can get them. Then we can go to Indiegogo and possibly get some of that money there. So we started writing the email. We're talking on the phone. And all of a sudden I refresh literally half an hour before the thing expires, I refresh and we reached $100,060 or something like that. And some guy in Greece basically gave us $20,000 in that last hour.
And when it happens, like the first few hours and the last few hours, everything in between is losing friends.
Yeah, it's so true.
Kickstarter turns friends into former friends.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. You understand completely what it's like.
You know,
So,
it's like, But it's incredible. Mazel tov. Congratulations. I mean, that's a hard number to pull off, and to come so close and then finally get it at the last minute is as just truly, truly remarkable. And thank God for that.
Yeah, and thank God for this guy who basically, what we found out is that he is an executive producer and a producer. I don't know if you know Father of Productions.
Don't know that.
He
Sorry.
he's done Lobster, the film.
Oh, yeah.
He
Yeah.
he helps Ira Sachs with all his films.
Yeah.
He helps new and young directors to make indie films, and he had worked with Olympia in Texas for Seven Chinese Brothers with Jason Schwartzman.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
And so Olympia put, he did this. I got in contact with him, and he said, have you shot Olympia in Greece? I said, no. I said, we've been in Cyprus, but there hasn't been any plans on Greece. And he said, well, wouldn't it be great if you shot her and her family here? And I said, of course it would be great, but I can't, what am I going to say? Hey, Olympia, why don't you go to Greece with your family? And he said, well, do you think you can ask her if she would be willing to come with her family and I pay for the whole trip? And I was like, absolutely. So I called Olympia and I was like, Christo, who you know very well, offered to do this. Are you interested? And she's like, well, let me think about it. And then she called me. She's like, oh my God, it would be amazing. I've always wanted to take my kids and my grandkids to Greece. So he made it possible for us. So that's how we did it. We traveled with, helicopters from place to place. It was, he was so generous, not just financially, but with his ideas. We would meet every night, and we would, he would ask questions about what we're doing and do you guys need anything? And the whole going to Lesbos was not going to happen because it was just too complicated. And he's like, listen, I can just get you the helicopter and you can just fly from Athens to Lesbos. We don't need to depend on the airlines. And we're like, oh God, yes, please. So the four women would not have happened, if
Which is a great scene.
Yeah.
So what was it like when you finally finished the film and showed it to her?
So she invited, I think there was 12 women in her apartment. Mm-hmm. And it was me, my two editors, and one of the executive producer. And we sat in the back, and the discussion before was like, because at this point she's 87 years old. Mm-hmm. She's smoking like a truck driver. Yeah. She's constantly has to go and pee. And we're going, okay, what's going to happen when she decides to go to the toilet? Do we pause the film and let her, so she can, and ruin the atmosphere for the, everybody else? Or do we just keep press playing and she misses part of the film? And we're like, no, let's pause. So the film starts and she doesn't move for the entirety of the film. She doesn't ask for a cigarette. The film ends, the other women are clapping. Everybody's like, talking to each other. Somebody's talking to me. And all of a sudden I hear, where's Harry? Where's Harry? And, I wave from the back and I said, I'm here. And she's like, oh my God, Harry, this is so beautiful. She said, I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting this. And she said, this film was about me. And even I wanted to know what happened next. So
and then she went to the bathroom.
That's
what happened next.
Yes.
So speaking of what's happening next, what have you been doing since you made this film, which is done very well, but now that you know how to do a cinema verite documentary and all the pitfalls, what are you doing?
Well, it's funny that you asked that question, and it's really strange that Sally's here because in 2011, when Olympia came to Dallas to do that,
Yeah.
I was doing a fundraiser in Dallas for my second documentary, which is about a gay couple in Dallas, Texas.
Oh, really?
And so Olympia came to our fundraiser to help, with publicity and stuff like that. That was something that I've been shooting for a while, and I had put on the back burner the last 3 years because I just could not financially or time-wise concentrate on two. So I am probably in a month's time going back to start editing on that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also producing an experimental documentary for a fellow Cypriot director who also lives in New York, and it's about Cyprus. So that's the two projects that I'm going to be working on now. All documentaries.
Oh.
We went from like, I hate documentaries to like, oh my God, I can't live without documentaries.
Well, now you know how to do it, and
yeah,
you are sucked into revealing the truth in people's lives, and the joy of editing, and those times when you'd have two conflicting things that you didn't think go together, and they go together and they explain things in a real way, and the music comes, and it's just like, God, this is just a wonderful thing, right?
Right. That's right.
There's nothing quite like that. So Sally, what are you working on aside from being in a nice, cool place where we in Dallas are very hot?
I know. I actually, well, as you know, with so much, all performing art has been shut down because of COVID, but we finally received permission from Actors Equity Association, the union, to begin to work on a play at Dallas Theater Center again. So I'll start rehearsals for the musical Working, based on the book that Studs Terkel wrote back in the 70s.
Right, that's a big deal.
Yeah. So we'll be performing that show at Dallas Theater Center. It'll open in early July, but it'll be the first time that we're back in a room, working together. And it's going to be just fantastic, to be creating art again and making stories happen and inviting people to come back and be together, with us.
So
yeah.
What are you playing in this?
So in this particular one, Working, it's snapshots. It's almost like I don't want to say it's a musical review. It's not, but you meet different people who and get to know their work lives and get to know them as human beings. It's a great book. If you haven't read it in a long time, I would recommend picking it up again. But I am playing a mill worker, and I'm playing a teacher, appropriate, and I'm playing a fundraiser. So Candy, Grace, and Roseanne. So those are the three primary characters I'll be playing that have songs associated, and then I'll just be part of the ensemble as well.
And Studs Terkel is really, I think, very important in how we think about documentary, about having people tell their, stories and sort of honest in that kind of way. Well, folks, do any of you have any questions for our guest here?
I don't know what Barbara and Marvin are friends of mine, and they're here from Baltimore. Or are you here from Baltimore, Marvin, or from Virginia? I forget.
Washington suburbs.
Okay.
I have a question for Harry.
Okay.
You still have your American Express card.
What? You still have its American Express card?
Does he still have it?
Oh, do you still have that American Express card?
Right. And have you paid off the interest?
Yes.
Now, also, my wife who left said it's not Olympia. How do you pronounce it, Barbara? Olympia.
That's right. That's right.
See? So the American pronunciation is Olympia. How did she pronounce it? Olympia? Yeah. She pronounced it the American way. Yeah. Except when we're in when we're in Greece, and I would tease her, and I would say Olimbitsamo.
So speaking of being Greece, talk about that scene with the four women. I mean, it's like you just walk around and come upon that, and they're such really great characters. Or did you know that they would be there?
No,
No. We had just walked out of her father's house, the house that her father grew up in. We had been in there inside, I mean, outside, basically walked the garden in front and the back. And nothing really happened. And as for me, as the director, like we had, you know, God, we came all the way to Lesbos.
No
for
magic moments.
No magic moments at all. And I was like, oh. So we said goodbye to the people who left there, thanked them, and we're walking out, and the camera is on the ground, basically just shooting and she sees those 4 women. They were just straight ahead towards, you know, we had to go that direction to go to our car. And she just darted to them and started talking. And so it was like, okay, get the cameras up, and had no idea what was going to happen. And it was magic. It was just pure magic. And Olympia does not usually go to people to talk to. But the fact that it was 4 women, similar age, you know, with Olympia, she just wanted to connect. Olympia. and that she did. You know, it was really beautiful.
Yeah, it really, you know, shows what life would have been like if she were that age and have lived her life there.
And I asked her, I said, do you, I don't know why I asked her that question, but I said, do you feel guilt that your parents left and you know, and she's like, guilt? She's like, no, I don't feel guilt. I'm grateful that my parents left and, you know, and gave me, you know, a chance. She said, I feel shortchanged for missing out, you know, what the family, you know, what life would have been there. That's how she expressed it.
It's still very much integrated into her persona and how she sees the world.
Yeah,
I think is really important. Well,
now,
guys, yeah, go on.
Sorry, a little weird story is that as we were only there for 24 hours. So we were leaving from the hotel to go to the airport, and someone's on the hotel reception, there's a man who lives here whose last name is Dukakis, who's your cousin. And she's like, what? So we called this guy, and she spoke to him. She had never heard of him before. And he's lived all his life there. And he was a teacher and an amateur actor. He was doing plays all his life in Lesbos. And unfortunately, we never got the chance to meet him face to face. I think he was older than Olympia. But that was really weird that 2 people from the same family, one in Lesbos, one in New York, both doing exactly the same thing.
Well, thank you so much for coming with us for this hour. It's just been really wonderful. Congratulations on like not giving up, because there were many off ramps you could have taken. And you really did an incredible job. And I just can't wait to see the new film that you're working on. And if we can help you in any way, although I don't know that we have any money to give you, but we can help you in there are other ways we could be of service. And Sally, so wonderful to meet you, and hope we can do something together in some way. You never know what I'll be directing.
That sounds wonderful. Yeah, thank you for inviting me. It's been a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
And I'm very excited to see Working. I definitely want to see that when that's up. And I did, by the way, go and see a dance performance at the AT&T Performing Arts Center last week. So that was like the first thing that they had that was live. So life is coming back to all of us, which is really wonderful, which is why I'm giving you your Thursday nights back for 3 weeks. But we will come back. We will come back. We are not abandoning you. We will keep this experience moving forward. Thank you all so much for coming. I really, really appreciate it. And I will miss you in the next few weeks, but we will gather again really soon.